Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday's webinar. We have the pleasure to be working with Andrias J.
Hi, everybody.
Andrias will be talking to us about student events, and she comes with a wealth of information. We're also pleased that she's just a recent CSEP delegate. She just got awarded her CSEP designation. She also is a CMP, and she has her MBA. And we're going to turn it over to Andrias in a minute. She comes to us from George Mason University. She's at the Fairfax campus, and she is the event manager in the Office of Admissions, and she also is director of logistics for the Washington Scholar Program. So she is a very busy gal, and we're really very appreciative that she carved some time out from her busy schedule to share what she knows about student events with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrias and give her the opportunity to introduce herself. And she has a really fun presentation that she will share with us.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be working with you today. I do have a Prezi, so I'm going to start that in just a moment. If you just give me 1 second, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll also make this available to you post-webinar. Alrighty, so please let me know if you can't see this, and we will make some adjustments. Again, we'll make this available to you after the fact, but I thought this would be a fun way to get started and to kind of give you some things that you can take notes on, but a good way to frame our conversation for today. So I think one of the first things that we want to ask is, how many of you have been planning student events or working in a student event capacity or on a college campus thus far? And if so, let us know how long you've been doing that.
I just put a poll together, and I'm going to start the poll. How many of you are involved in academic? And you can click yes if you are, no if you're not. Right now we have a 50-50, well, a little bit more are yes. And we'll have more people coming in through the course of the presentation. So if you do have any questions also, Andrias is happy to answer them at the end of her presentation. So jot them down and feel free to ask them at the end if you wish.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So I like to call this the road to success, navigating the nuances of student and academic events. But before we do that, I do want to give you a little bit about me. And I'm going to be flying through this information just to give you some sense of the beginnings of planning an event from beginning to end. So if you have questions, if you want me to delve in more during the question and answer, we can certainly do that. And then my contact information will be at the end of the presentation, so you can contact me directly. So who am I? My name is Andrias. I'm the Director of Logistics currently for the Washington Scholars Program. The Washington Scholars Program is home to the Washington Journalism and Media Conference and the Washington Youth Summit on the Environment. Those are 6-day summer programs for high school juniors and seniors that come from all over the country to join us for a summer of leadership and content within the areas of the environment, sustainability, and conservation, and then also journalism and media. So it's not so much about teaching them how to be a journalist, but exposing them to the industry that they're hopefully going to be in, and putting them in opportunities to meet with high-level speakers. We've had Hoda Kotb from the Today Show. We've had White House staff. We've had Candy Crowley. So many really high-level speakers, in addition to some hands-on experiences with our environmental conference, because as you may imagine, our students really want to dive in and work on farms and do all sorts of things. So I've spent a lot of time on farms this summer, and I'm excited to finally be done with our Washington Scholars Program summer conferences that we finished on, last Friday. So I have a dual role at George Mason University. The Washington Scholars Program is through the George Mason Office of Admissions. In addition, I'm technically also the event manager, and I plan all of the open houses and recruitment events for our freshman, transfer, non-degree, military, and international students. Aside from that, in my free time, or what I like to call my free time, which is not normally very free, I'm a wedding and special event consultant for my own small firm, Andrias Events. As Jill mentioned, I have 2 degrees from George Mason University, my Master's of Business Administration, and then a Bachelor of Science in Tourism and Events Management. And then I am a certified meeting professional and a certified special event professional. But before I did all of that, I came from Chester, Virginia. I moved up here 7 or 8 years ago. And I have had the opportunity to do many, many types of student events. So I started with the Student Involvement Office doing concerts, comedy shows, homecoming, anything you can think of. I started a speaker series here at George Mason to help with career preparation and readiness, and a sponsorship program to create collaborations across the university for student organizations. So I help them gain funding from university departments to market their events, and just to provide support to the student organizations. In addition, I was the director of comedy and speakers for the program board that also works with students, and a student-run board to put together comedy speaker events, our big festivals in the spring. We did Halloween events and all sorts of holiday events. We assisted with cultural events such as our International Week, Greek Week, of course, and many, many other things that are student-focused and student-run. Then I moved over to the Mason Conference Center, the Mason Inn Conference Center and Hotel, which closed actually a couple years ago and is now being used as an international student center. So they have different sorts of events now, but I was one of the hotel concierge and customer service professionals there. And then I also managed the George Mason University event calendar at one point. Then I moved over to admissions, where I became an advanced team member, the assistant director of logistics, now the director of logistics, et cetera, et cetera. So that gives you a very brief overview for what I do, but certainly I want to hear from you all in the next few minutes as well. So I'm going to now get to the presentation. All right, so our purpose for today is really to understand who we're planning events for, what are the challenges of student and academic events, especially on college campuses, what you need to consider when planning for your event design, satisfying your site requirements, creating meaningful collaborations across the university, marketing and the perfect timing of marketing in order for that to be successful, the challenges of campus event staffing, and then the importance of evaluation. So the most important thing is to really know your audience. We call them student events, but there are many, many different types of student events, and you really have to know the difference and who you're serving in order to determine what your event characteristics are going to be, what your site requirements are going to be, your marketing, so on and so forth. So just like with any events, really determining who the target market is very important. So you have prospective students, current students, even university alumni. And then not only are you thinking about who you're really trying to serve, which is the student most of the time, but who's coming with them, and what is the parent going to know or want to know? What is the sibling going to want to know? Are they bringing their other current students with them, or are they a current student that's bringing a prospective student to campus? So all of those things are going to be important to consider as you are trying to put together a student event. Okay, so prospective student events. In the Office of Admissions where I work, and the majority of the events that I plan, probably 50 to 60 per year, is part of our Office of Admissions recruitment plan. So we plan events, like I mentioned, for freshman, transfer, graduate, international, non-degree, military, and even continuing education can be part of this. It is not for me. There's another office that does continuing education. But that could include open houses, tours, special tours, and outreach events, college fairs, information sessions, and many other things. And we do this on and off campus. So while I'm going to focus mostly on on-campus events and the challenges of planning events on a college campus, there are also events that I plan throughout the country. We do college fairs and information sessions all over the country, and our international team does them all over the world. And then you have to consider how you're getting to those places. You know, travel and transportation and accommodations, all of those kind of things kind of come into that. So we're going to not talk about that as much today, but we are going to talk about what you need to consider on campus. So there are 2 seasons for admissions events, prospective students and admitted students. So prospective students are those that have not yet been admitted to the university. They may have just been looking, they may just be on a college tour, they may have already submitted an application, but have not yet been accepted. So there are many different categories that those students will fall in. Then you have admitted student events where you're going to have students that have already been admitted to the university. They're potentially getting scholarship applications or scholarship packages, financial aid packages from many different institutions. And depending on the caliber of the student, they might be choosing between lots of different universities. So what we do for our admitted student events is sometimes a little bit more beefed up, a little fancier than what we would do for our prospective student events, because the target is really, really paying attention. They're really focused on what sort of information they're getting from you. And with so many universities having open houses and events, outreach events, all of that, they're comparing. And you want to be aware that they really are comparing, and that you need to be on the forefront of engagement and activity and just fun and excitement while they're on your campus. In addition to that, we also have outreach events at George Mason where we work with middle and elementary school students to bring them to campus to start introducing them to the possibilities of post-secondary education. So that's a whole different market where you're thinking about chaperones and school buses and how you tailor a college admissions presentation to students that may not even be able to read yet. And then you have to consider, when students can't get to your campus, how do you, or to your event, not necessarily only to campus, how do you continue to engage with them? Do you need to have chat nights, telecounseling, virtual tours? There are many, many ways that you can get involved with them. And of course, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but social media is going to be a really key factor as we move forward. So then you consider current student events. I have a lot of experience with current student events as well, but you have to think about, why do we host current student events? And a lot of it is because you want to have community and school pride. You want to have people wearing the colors and screaming the chants and just having a wonderful time, making them feel like they could not imagine going to another university. Then you want to spread information and create awareness. Are there things that your students need to know? Are there opportunities and programs that they should be aware of? Do you need to train them on how to do something, or how to get the next job, or how to fix their resumes, all of those kind of things. And then of course you want to increase retention. The more engaged students feel, if they find a group of people that they're really close to, that they're really excited to work with, then they're more likely going to stay at the institution. And of course that's very important as you think about student life. So types of student events could be cultural celebrations. Here at George Mason, we have International Week, where we celebrate all of the different cultures. We actually have students from over 150 different countries, and that number continues and continues to grow. So we celebrate all of those cultural differences and give them opportunities to compete in dance contests and food contests, all sorts of things. And it's very exciting for everyone. Then you have traditions, your traditional events like homecoming, your spring festival, which we call Mason Day. I think there's like Maryland Day. Many institutions have these. Then you have the athletic events. And when you play your rival teams, what sort of tag-along events do you need to have surrounding those? Fundraisers and philanthropy events, whether that is, raising funds during Greek Week for Shackathon, or, raising funds for a specific cause, tailored to a current event, or something. Friendly competitions are always a lot of fun. Go around campus and find these items and you can win a prize. There's also parties that student organizations may host. And then of course, concerts, comedy shows, movie nights, all of the above. Then there's a special category of current students, which is incoming new students. So this is the transition between those admissions events that I talked about, and also the current student events. So in that window where you have students that may not know the campus well, they may still be kind of attached to their parents, etc., you need to do something to help them get acclimated. That may be orientation. We have an orientation and family programs and services office. However, some universities do that all within the admissions office. Then you'll have also welcome week when the students get there. Now our orientation is set up that it happens throughout the summer, and students come, they can choose dates and come with their families. It's an overnight 2-day event, and they actually have an opportunity to stay in the residence halls. The students do, not the parents, but they get to see the residence halls, kind of get their minds around what they need to bring and how to transition into this college atmosphere. But then when you're here, when they first get here, they're moving in, there's move-in day, we're trying to get them acclimated to life without their parents now, or just adjusting in general. Then there's also welcome week, which helps them to get to know the campus, provide safe activities for new students so that the first thing that they do is not to run off to the fraternity parties, etc. And then again, the awareness events, making sure that they understand the importance of alcohol, drug and health safety and education. And then just how to use the library, and where's the career services office, and how do you get in contact with people. Of course, and then there's new student convocation, which I think happens at every university. But this is just to give you an idea of how you can start to acclimate those incoming new students. And then, of course, alumni events. So I don't actually do alumni events myself, but I do participate in them, obviously. And I have many, many colleagues that work in our alumni relations office. But what's important is that that alumni experience and that alumni relationship must begin before they're alumni. They need to be aware of the services that you offer, the events that you offer, and to get excited about those programs prior to them actually graduating. So we have grad week during the convocations and the graduation ceremonies. We have lots of events where the Alumni Association participates hand in hand with our student involvement offices and even admissions to make sure students know about the opportunities available through the Alumni Association and why they should continue to be involved. Then it's important to have young alumni events so that they have an opportunity to be engaged, and so that they don't really feel out of place when they come and you've got your oldest alumni that are the only people coming to these things. We also have Alumni Weekend. There are affinity groups. Say, for instance, you have the DC Alumni Chapter, or you have the business school student alumni or a business school alumni chapter, etc. Then give awards. Recognize those that are really participating and working with students and giving back to the university. And that might also include giving campaigns and exclusive donor events, and then mentor programs between young alumni and the older alumni. And then, of course, you've got your university-wide events, homecoming, your university festivals, graduation and commencement, your launch events. We just had a groundbreaking for a new building that's happening, and the donors that gave funds for the naming of the building were here to break ground. Special announcements. Our Patriot Center actually was just, someone bought the naming rights to the Patriot Center, which is now going to be the Eagle Bank Arena. So there was a big special announcement for that, and an event, of course, that came along with that. And then you have university anniversaries. A couple years ago, George Mason University turned 40 years old. We're pretty young, but we're doing great things around here. And we had a big, huge gala and basically turned our Patriot Center arena, or what was then the Patriot Center, into this beautiful event space. And our alumni and development offices assisted with that. And then you have your faculty staff for student recognition events for different reasons, your student leaders, your student government, faculty that have served for a certain period of time, and then political campaign events. We've had several presidential candidates to come to campus for several different reasons, and that's always a shindig when they get ready to do those sorts of things. But you have to be aware of what space you have and what's available and what sort of aspects you need to change or secure in order for those political campaign events to happen. And then, as I mentioned, concerts, comedy shows, live events. Our Patriot Center offers events that are not necessarily student-specific events, but there may just be a tour that's coming, or the circus, the Disney on Ice, all of those kind of things come to big arenas when you have them on your campuses. So with that said, and as you can probably imagine, each event has its own challenge. Event scheduling is one of them, and we'll talk about that. Faculty and staff engagement, internal and external vendor coordination, the payments and the paperwork, oh my gosh, campus collaborations, the perfect timing of marketing, and more. So we're going to get into these challenges a little bit and how you can work to overcome those. So event scheduling, you have to consider everything. And when I say everything, I really do mean it. There are some events that are going to be seasonal. For example, your admissions events, every year we have a fall open house, we have a spring open house, we have our admitted student events between January and May. We have some events that we do not host in the summer because high school students are on vacation, or they're in summer school, or they are, practicing on the football team and band practice and all of those kind of things. So you have to know, and you have to take a look at your attendance numbers from year to year to see when is the best time to host these events, and which events do you need to have year after year, and which events are really just one-off sort of things. So you have to also consider the academic calendar. Don't try to hold student events during spring break because no one's there. They've all gone to beach week, they've all gone home. No one is interested in being there to host an event for students, prospective students, or to be there to have current student events. So that's really important. Reading days for the calendar. Of course, you don't want to host anything then. When you have exams, you can't host anything then. Now, there are going to be some programs through student involvement and other offices that may host like Distress Fest or, Pancake Day, just to help the students get some relief from their studying. But you have to know when it's appropriate to do those things and how the university calendar affects what you're doing. Your community calendars. When we are doing admissions, open houses, and those sorts of things, you have to consider when the high schools are out of school, when their spring break is, which is often different than when our university spring break is. What's going on in the community. Don't try to host a big, huge open house when half of the streets in the city are going to be shut down because there's the Spring Fest in Fairfax. So those things you must consider. And I'm going to say this 2 or 3 times, but plan years in advance. You have to look at these things prior to, a couple months out. I am already planning through 2018 and 2019, and I'm not necessarily determining the actual dates of the events just yet, but I have identified between the campus, the community calendar, the academic calendar, holidays, etc. I've determined that this is an appropriate time for this event, and now I can choose 2 or 3 different dates that we can choose from. And as we get closer, as we get a year out or even 6 months out, depending on what the event is, we can look and say, okay, this would be the best optimal date for this event. But if you wait until 6 months out, when all of the student orgs have booked all of your big event spaces, then you don't have those options. And when it comes to these big university-wide traditional events and your standard open houses and those sort of things, in some ways they take priority over maybe a student event or something like that. So ultimately, have a great relationship with the people that schedule the space. We have an office of event management that actually manages our event system. We use 25 Live, and that's very, very helpful. But you've got to help them as your internal stakeholders know that this is important, this is why it is important, and these are the long-term effects of having these events. So we'll talk about evaluation, but you've already got to know why this event is so important, how many people you serve, how successful was it, how can we make it more successful, and what stakeholders do we need in order to do that. And that kind of goes into the next point. Of course, holidays and that sort of thing, but competing priorities of the university. If the President of the United States is coming, somebody's event might get bumped. Do you have if that's the case, your scheduling system and staff should be letting you know that. But again, you have to have those great relationships. And then there's a lack of event space. As I mentioned, our hotel and conference center closed down and is now an international residence hall for those students that are working with us through an international partnership. We lost 2 ballrooms as a result of that. So events that would normally be held in the ballrooms, or my events that would be held in the ballrooms, are now having to come back to some of this other student union space. So we don't have a ton of space. And honestly, they're not building a ton of event space. They're building classroom space, which makes sense. But you've got to know where your space is and how you might be able to reconfigure that space to make your events come to life. And when you just have to put up a tent outside and go with it. Building renovations, we had a building that came offline this summer, or it is offline right now for building renovation. We're going to have that in several phases over the next couple of years to keep our buildings up to date, which is absolutely important and so important for the recruitment aspect of things. But you have to know when you are going to have to move things around. And if you're planning years in advance and the university knows, oh, we were going to have an event that day, but we're probably going to have to move it, then maybe a year or so out, you can get that information as opposed to having to wait until the last minute. Campus construction, there are several streets right now that are closed as a result of the groundbreaking that I talked about. We are breaking ground, I think, probably in the next few minutes on our new Health and Human Services building. So when we're thinking about how students get to campus, how new families get around campus and get to the appropriate parking, we need to anticipate new messaging, and when is probably not a good time to try to bring people to campus. And then of course the mega events. A campus-wide event planning meeting is always very helpful. I have come to know that many universities don't necessarily have a big mega events committee. There are planners in all of the different offices and departments, but you've got to start those relationships with the other people that plan events on your campus and try to get everyone on the same page and have everyone starting to plan together. Right now, we are working on having alumni weekend, family weekend, and our fall open house for prospective students all in the same weekend. So you can only imagine the coordination that that takes. Faculty and staff engagement. This can be tough. Faculty and staff are not always understanding of what it takes to recruit a class or to keep students at the university. They understand it from their perspective, but they don't necessarily understand it from the event perspective and the value of having someone with expertise in a certain field of study to speak to a student or to advise a current student. So in order to kind of overcome those challenges and to make sure that people, number one, show up for your events, especially if they're on the weekends, and number two, to make sure that they are excited and really wanting to share their information and have this fire for working with students, you've got to give them the information up front. So identify the requirements for the office or department representation. I put out a calendar a year out that has all of the events for that next academic year. Most of the time, that's not going to change. We definitely are not going to be canceling events. If anything, we might add a small event. But what we try to do is to ensure the departments that once you've scheduled staffing for these events, it's pretty much set in stone. This is it. And then you're not popping up on them. You know, faculty don't necessarily have regular workday schedules. So you've got to let them know so that they can make those arrangements in advance and plan for the appropriate staffing of their office departments. Then you have to determine the format. Are you asking them to do a presentation? Are you asking them to set up, vendor style so they can talk to students that are interested only in their specific topic? Are you asking them to do interactive activities? Are you asking them to be available for students to stop by their offices? Are you asking them to have an add-on program as a part of one of your admitted student events? You've got to know what you want. And that's going to come from looking at the objectives of your event, the success of the event from previous years, and determining what you need and what the guests respond best to, depending on who the guest is and who the guest is bringing with them. The information that parents want and the information that students want is often quite different. The parents sometimes will come and have prepared their student to ask these critical questions, and sometimes the parent just takes over. Sometimes when you're working with students alone, they don't know what to ask. So you have to think about those things and help to prepare faculty and staff and any volunteers that are working for your events to know what they're going to be faced with and what they can do to start conversations or to make the experience more meaningful for people that might just be lost in the shuffle. Be very detailed. I send emails not only a year out, but a month out, 2 weeks out, 2 days before, and that will include maps of the space. It will include the schedule for the day, attendee lists, if we can give that information to help them tailor their presentations, anything that we can give them that we think will be helpful. And then schedule meetings if you have to. Over the years, our events tend to be pretty similar in nature, so we don't have to have a whole lot of meetings. But every now and again, maybe once a year, we'll sit down with all of our academic unit contacts, all of our university department contacts, and help them to understand how the market is changing, how social media is affecting the different events that we're hosting, what they can do to be even more engaging, and to get them rolling. And then we want to make it as easy as possible for them and consider their time. Don't have people there just to have them there. Make sure that it's going to be worthwhile and that they're going to be able to see the benefit of being present. Okay, so internal and external vendor management. I don't know how your universities or your sites work, but it is not, for me, it is not a one-stop shop. There's no one person in events management that does it all. Now, yes, they can do it all, and they have some conference planners that will do that, but a lot of times I am working with many, many different contacts in order to set up things that at a hotel will be very easy. So dining, if you're using a dining hall, is a different person than if you're having the meal catered in an event location. Waste management doesn't necessarily just tackle the campus as quickly as we would like to when they don't know about it. I've got to order extra trash cans. I've got to order extra recycling bins. I've got to make sure that they have the appropriate staff available to assist with all of the boxes from box lunches that have to be broken down, or composting, or whatever the case may be. And depending on how sustainable your event needs to be, that's a very critical conversation that needs to be had. But you've got to know who to have it with. Then there's facilities management. If you need to rent a vehicle or a shuttle, who do you work through that? If you need generators, if you need electrical outlets, if you need work orders in order to get water for your tents and water hoses, or if you need extra housekeeping, who do you talk to for those different things? That's going to be different across all universities. Hopefully it's a little easier for you wherever you're working from than it is for me, but it is quite the process, and you've got to keep a lot of very specific details in order. So start that process early. I can tell you for audiovisual, knowing, once I get my year out calendar together, I send in all of my preliminary orders, the work orders, the waste management orders, the catering orders, the audiovisual, just to let them know, hey, this is happening, and I will make adjustments as necessary. But based on what I know about my event evaluation and just post-event reports, I can say this is pretty close to what we're going to need, and my vendors appreciate that so much. Schedule your load-in time, especially when you're working with scheduling and you have lots of student orgs that are working to get the same space. You don't want events scheduled so close together that you don't have time to turn the rooms over, that you don't have time to do appropriate load-in for your vendors. You don't want to be rushing these things, especially for these big, huge events. And when you have, a movie premiere, or you have a festival coming in where you're going to have food trucks and you're going to have porta potties and all those kind of things, you got to schedule that out. And a production schedule is going to be your absolute best friend. And if you have any questions about what should be on your production schedule or how you should set one up, please let me know. I use that as my Bible for the day, and it helps me to sit down and plan out every single detail, maybe from the event, from the day before, or events prior to the main event, all the way through the time when the vendors come and pick up their rental items. Permits. Permits are sometimes determined by the governing body. So for us, because we're a state institution, when you send in a temp permit, it's got to go all the way down to Richmond, where our capital is, in order to be approved. That means that there's lots of documentation that has to go with that. For a tent especially, you may have to have the engineer schematic drawings, which are thousands and thousands of dollars if the tent company doesn't have those. So it's all kinds of stuff that goes into permitting. That's going to be for ABC permitting, tent permitting, stage permitting, all sorts of things you're going to have to draw out. And I know so much about tent permitting these days that I didn't think I would need to know. I didn't think I would need to provide documentation for. And it's coming down the pike because the rules are changing. So depending on who is approving those permits, you may need to start that process a year out as well. Contracts, payments, deposit, money in general. We're a state institution. We have lots of state rules about how you can contract, how you can pay for things, deposits, what money can be used for. I mean, getting petty cash and stuff like that is nearly impossible. So you got to plan in advance and anticipate your needs and anticipate the needs of any clients that you're working with or your bosses, to make sure that you can do everything that you need to do. For every single food and beverage order I have, there's a piece of paperwork that basically says, this is what we're planning, this is who the food is going through, this is how much we expect it to cost, and it's got to go to the provost's office, and they have to approve that order. So it takes a while. You can't just be booking things at the very last minute. You've got to plan in advance. And then also bidding requirements. If we're over $5,000 worth of items, we've got to go through a bidding process. One of those or two of those bids have to come from SWAM vendors. They've got to be recognized in our payment system. So all of that comes into play as you're working with internal and external vendors. Ultimately, always make sure that you have a great relationship with those vendors, that they take good care of you, that they understand your needs, and that you thank them, and then offer them some data, offer them some evaluation information that will help you in the future and help them.
What does SWAM stand for, just in case some of us don't know?
Oh, sure. It is small businesses, women-owned, and then minority-owned businesses.
Okay. We call it something different in the Massachusetts, in the Commonwealth, but so that's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so small, women-owned, and minority-owned businesses. Yep. Okay, so your event design considerations. First of all, you've got to start with a budget, and you start with that when you get, when you start with your objectives and who your target market is and what is the budget. That should be like the third question, of course. Our budgets are shrinking, honestly, and we're always being asked to do more with less. I feel like that's the backstory of every event manager. Know what your budget is. Know what's most important. Know where you can cut and where you cannot. Okay, we eat our budget. Food and beverage pretty much takes up the majority of our budget. And we know that, but we want to showcase certain things like Mason Dining, our campus dining. That's very important. Sometimes we go with other vendors, especially when we're thinking about, like our big college fairs, when we're feeding the masses. We might go with a box lunch from Jason's Deli or Firehouse Subs or something like that. But know what your budget allows. Theme and decor and color scheme. When can you deviate from the university colors? The brand profile, you've got to know your brand profile for your university. A lot of times it will include other colors, but your logos and your artwork and the things that you're going to use through marketing and even the things that your speakers are going to mention and say may have to follow that brand profile. Know it up and down and make sure that if you're working with internal and external graphic designers and marketing firms, they've got to know it as well. So you don't necessarily always have to go with the George Mason green and gold if you want to have a student event, but you've got to know how to tie that in, how to make it make sense, and how to make sure that when students receive a postcard from us, they know that it's from George Mason and that they're not searching high and low to figure out, what is this? Where is this? Who is this for? And then food and beverage, dietary restrictions. How are you going to accommodate those, especially for a large event? For our summer conferences, we collect all of that information and we tailor our meals to those people. I am telling you, over the summer, we've had kosher, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free. We've had gluten-free vegetarian, gluten-free lactose intolerant, no shade vegetables. I had no idea that there was a such thing as a vegetarian that can't have certain vegetables like onions and peppers and all those kind of things. So on your registration sites, you should be collecting information about that. Now, in most cases, regardless of what event you're having, you should plan for gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, and lactose intolerant. Absolutely. But depending on the event, whether you're having a long-term conference, whether it's an expensive meal, yada, yada, you may have to provide very specific things, especially when it comes to kosher and halal meat and etc. Giveaways. We love to give giveaways. But giveaways can get a little expensive. I'm big on giving people something that's significant enough that they're going to notice it and that it's not going to go into their pile of junk at home. With students, that means meeting them where they are. What are students using? What is important to them? What do we think is going to be good enough that they're going to wear it or they're going to use it, they're going to take it somewhere, and that it will serve as a marketing piece for the next person who sees them with it? Students love free things. So they're going to take it, they're going to love it no matter what you give them, but is it going to go the next step? Is it going to then keep them talking about the university or the event that you hosted? Is it going to remind them to register again next year? And then rentals, chairs, tables, linens, centerpieces, tents, etc. What are you going to need? And how often do we need to revamp things? For admissions events, a lot of times you recruit a class, they come in and then they do current student events. So we don't have to change or completely revamp our events year after year after year because they're different people and they're people of different age groups and of different levels of knowledge. So know when you need to revamp, know how you need to revamp, know how much it's going to cost you to revamp. And maybe you do things in baby steps instead of, tackling it all at once. And again, know when you need to get things approved. When does the Environmental Health and Safety Office needs to come out and look at your event design? When does the Creative Services and Marketing Department need to approve your marketing plan or need to improve your marketing schedule? Or when can they support you even more? When can they help you get the word out? That's all very important. And then site requirements. When you're having outdoor events, are there classes going on? Are there other events going on? Do they have a limit on how loud the music can be? Do they have spaces that you can't have music or loud noise in a certain period of time, and just knowing acoustics of the space. When do you need a microphone and when don't you? Your tenant and stage permits, which we talked about, the recycling and waste management, fencing, especially if you're doing things with homecoming and tailgating and that sort of thing. When do you have to have fencing? What needs to be on the fencing? What kind of fencing does it need to be? Parking, how difficult is it to park? How far do they need to walk? Do you need to provide walking instructions from point A to point B? Do you need to provide validations? Do they need to have a special parking pass? All of these kind of things are very important. And then transportation to the campus. If you know that there are going to be a lot of people that don't have cars and they might be taking the metro or the subway or city buses, make sure that you know how they're going to get to you. Signage and wayfinding. I love signage. When I'm having an event, I want other people to know that I'm having an event. I want them to be able to see that this is something that I should be a part of. Why didn't I know about this, right? I'm going to make sure that I know next year. All of that is critical. And how do you get signage? The important thing about signage is don't make it so specific that you have to get the same sign made every single year. If I walked you into our workroom, which is next door, you would see that I have about 1 million signs. Not really, maybe about 300 signs. I try to make them so that every year I can reuse them. Signage is expensive. You've got to know what you can put on the sign, what's appropriate. If you know that your logo frequently changes, if you know that the names of your colleges, schools and colleges within the university frequently change, how can you do things so that you don't have to keep getting the same things over and over again? Now, I will tell you that for banners, a lot of times you can have them, if you have a good banner company, you can have them pull the dates and stuff off of banners and have them replaced, but you can only do that a certain amount of times. So make sure that you have that. Do you need to provide signage for your tents? Do you need parking signs? Do you need, chalking on the sidewalks? What do you need to do to make sure that people can get to your event and get away from your event as well? You don't want people to come and be upset because they couldn't find you, and you don't want their last experience leaving the campus to be that they couldn't find their car. So whether that is human signage and wayfinding, or if that is physical signage, make it happen. Then to power, know what your caterers need with their hot boxes and their dedicated circuits and that sort of thing, as well as your AV, your lighting, any vendors that are coming in, food trucks and carnival rides and all of that requires a certain amount of power. And you've got to know where that is and how you're going to get that power to them. And then of course, safety issues, making sure that everything is safe and that wires are covered and all that. And then restrooms, of course. Okay. So I'm getting toward the end, but I do want to talk to you about the perfect timing of marketing. And I say perfect timing because it can't be too early and it can't be too late, especially when you're dealing with students. If you send out something 3 or 4 months in advance, they're not just going to register and show up. They might register, they may not show up because they forgot. They might not register at all until the very last minute, especially when you're talking about people that are volunteering for things, that are staffing. You've got to be careful. And if you want to start things way far out, which in some cases you definitely should, you have to have a whole entire marketing plan. So before you send your first marketing message, you need to plan for those marketing milestones. What is going to happen? When do we need to time this? When do we need to have a separate link to show who registered because they got our postcard and who registered for the email links? When do you need to know whether or not you actually send an invitation? If there are parents involved, they like getting things in the mail. Students, maybe a text message system will be better. You've got to know your audience. Email is not being read. The amount of emails that go unread is phenomenal. You have got to reach them in other ways. Meet them where they are. If it's Snapchat, do it. I have a Snapchat now. I never thought I would have a Snapchat. It's actually pretty cool. But we have an admission Snapchat, and you would be surprised at how many people are looking at it. You would also be surprised at how many students came to our summer conferences this year and never posted on Instagram, never used our hashtags for Instagram, but they were on Snapchat all day long. So how do you get them talking? How do you get them talking to other students? How do you also encourage them to use things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter? For some populations, you're going to have to do a little bit more encouraging than you normally would. So plan those things. Have a staff member that's the social media person. Or if you don't have staff that are savvy enough to do it, or you're not savvy enough to do it, get a student to do it. That they do all of our stuff. We tell them what they want, what kind of content they want, and they create these social media marketing plans for us that coincide with our marketing milestones and our big marketing plans. And it has been so helpful. We did a big roadshow in March for for admitted students. We went to 4 cities in 4 days: Philadelphia, Saddlebrook, New Jersey, Long Island, and Boston. And we used social media as our main marketing tool. We sent postcards, we made emails, we did calls and all that kind of thing, but we found that social media was the most effective for us. And we use social media to keep them involved after they had already registered. Don't think that your marketing is really just to get them registered. For student events, especially when they're not paying anything, we don't charge anything for our open houses. And a lot of our current student events are also very inexpensive or free. For that reason, they haven't necessarily bought into the idea of actually attending. So you've got to do some extra things to make sure that they get there, because you want to know that your registration numbers are pretty consistent. And yes, you'll have a no-show rate, and you need to continue to measure that and wait until it levels out. It will get to a point of leveling out so that every year, 25% of people are not going to show up. So you can over-register, but you have got to have an event a couple times to know what's going to happen and how you can plan for that and how you can make sure that you're making the most out of the resources that you're using. Robocalls, I love robocalls. You can send it to their phones, their cell phones, but you got to think about what information are you collecting in your registration process. What do you need to collect? Because that is going to tie into your evaluation, which we'll talk about in just a second. But press releases, like I mentioned, can you get the campus newspaper to feature you? Make sure that you're marketing internally to your internal stakeholders, maybe the students that are assisting with the events that can tell their siblings about your open house, or students that can tell other students, people that are getting them engaged and excited. Who are those people going to be? How do you market to them? How do they market to the student? And how do you market directly to the student? All of that is critical. And I'm happy anytime you want to run your marketing ideas by me, let me know. I'm happy to do that. It's always so much fun, because marketing is really the first step to bringing your event to life. You can have a fantastic event. If no one is there, you have an issue. If the people there are not excited, or they were expecting something that was conveyed in your marketing that didn't really come to fruition during the event, then you've got people that are upset. So it's all got to match. It's all got to make sense. It's all got to be a plan. And like I said, you've got to excite them before, during, and after the event. Keep the conversation going, especially as it deals with recruitment and retention. You want them to continue speaking with you, to feel comfortable with you, and to tell their friends, so that your next event will be even more successful than the last. And like I said, event evaluation. Start with the end in mind. When you set your objectives, when you think about your target market, think about am I going to prove that this event was successful? What is my return on investment? How do I manage that? What information should you be collecting during registration? We started collecting Twitter handle because people were asking us questions on Twitter and we didn't know who they were. We couldn't look up their file. We couldn't see who they were. So we're collecting cell phone numbers so we can do our text messages and robocalls. We're doing Twitter handle and Instagram, or whatever information they want to share, your food and beverage information, what sessions they're planning on attending, where they're coming from. All of that is going to be very important. When you're dealing with parents, do you need to be collecting parent information, parent email? Because the parents are the ones reading the emails. And honestly, we plan for things based on the times that parents are at work, or the times that parents are getting to work, so that they will see our messages as the first in their box, right? And I've noticed that I'm getting a lot more emails during midday, because people expect you to check your email during lunch. So know those tendencies. Collect the information you need, and year after year, make the adjustments to your registration page and to your surveys to collect that information. But of course, don't make so many changes that you can't compare from year to year, right? You still have to have some sort of consistencies. And know your past surveys. Don't collect survey information that you're not going to read. Read it all. Create some sort of document that you can share with the people that are giving you your budgets from year to year to year. This helps you to make the case for why you need more events, why you need more money, why you need more staff. All of that is important, but also just to know that, yes, this event is effective because the way that we do this event is effective, because when you're trying to get those faculty and staff to be engaged in your event, they want data. They're data driven, and you've got to provide that. But you have also got to think about, what data am I not collecting? What data don't I have the ability to collect? How can I integrate things from other places? How are you going to measure attendance, especially for open events? Some of our events, we don't necessarily check in every single person because they're just too big. Thousands and thousands of people come to some of our events. We don't necessarily check them all in, but how are you going to measure your attendance? You know, do you have clickers at the door? Do you have some sort of barcode system? What are you using? And make improvement notes along the way. Don't wait until after the event is over to say, oh, well, at the beginning during registration, I thought that I was going to make this adjustment, but I've forgotten what it is. I literally have a piece of paper or a Word document or something where I am writing down, okay, when registration opened today, there was a lag, and this was the reason for the lag. So next year, 2 weeks out, we're going to test it, or we're going to provide this information. We actually have these big, huge testing days where we go through and test all of our admitted student pages to make sure that they're authenticating correctly and that they're not allowing people who are not admitted to be registering for events, etc. So those kind of things are really important. As you plan an event over and over again, or host several events that are different, you'll start to determine what you need. But try to think about it in advance. What are your superiors going to ask you to provide? And collect that before they ask for it. And always do an evaluation, big or small. I don't care if you don't have time to read it. Get an intern, get another staff member, hire a part-time person to go through your event data and pull it. It's going to be critical. I have someone doing that for me right now, and I don't always get to sit down and evaluate immediately after the event, but I do at least write down my personal evaluation and make sure that my assistant does the same so we can compare. And then once we get the big data back and we start planning for the next year of events, we have something that we can work from, and we're not just doing the same thing over and over because it's always seemed to work. Don't do that, because in the age of social media and innovation, it's critical that you are keeping their attention and that you are staying with the times. Okay, so that basically ties it up. We're going to open it up for questions right now, but I'm going to leave this slide up for just a few minutes just so you can get my contact information. I am more than happy to answer any questions that you have, be it about student events or weddings and special events, whatever your questions may be. I look forward to hearing from you all, and thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I hope that it gave you some great information that you can use in the future.
Great. And we're also, Andrias, you're welcome to join us on our Special Events Institute Facebook page, and we can ask questions there and create some kind of collaboration. And also on the Special Events Institute blog, we posted about this webinar, and you can also ask questions and begin some discussions there as well. Now, in the chat room, we have a question from Sharon. What does Andrias use to send mass text messages to students? Andrias, would you like to share a little bit about that?
I'm going to come out of my screen sharing right now. Okay, can you see me?
Yes.
All right. So text messages, there's actually two things that we use. For the student events that we have, there is a CRM system. We use Hobson's Connect at George Mason. Some people might use PeopleSoft or other things. So we're able to send text messages through that system. And you can do that based on, let's say you have an event where you've loaded in the registration data. So we know, okay, we're going to create a filter to say only people that have registered for this event or only people that have gotten our email but haven't registered for the event will get the text message to remind them to register or to remind them to check into the event, etc. So we can do that through Connect. We also, for our robocalls, we use One Call Now, where you can take an Excel sheet, load it in with the data that you need, and you can send text messages from there. I don't typically do that because we like to be able to go back and track how people use the text message, or whether or not they clicked on the link, or whether they responded to something, whether they called us back. We can do that a little easier through our CRM system. But One Call Now allows you to do that, and there are many, many others depending on what sort of systems you need to speak back to each other. I saw that there was a person who asked for a blank production schedule.
Yes.
I would definitely give you the template that I use, but I have one sitting on my desk from one of our largest open houses. So I'll just show you an example of what that looks like right now. It's basically a chart, gives you the time there, also gives you the task the location, and then who's going to do what. And what I do is, if you can see the highlights there, you'll see all of my crazy notes as well, because the night before the event, when I can't sleep, I write all sorts of things that I need to remember. But each person has a task, and they should be able to find their name on the subsequent pages to let them know what is going to be happening during the event. So I actually pack boxes. It'll say box 1, South Side, which is where one of our dining halls. Box 2, the Johnson Center, which is one of our student union buildings. Box 3, yada, yada. Then I take them to certain hubs throughout the day or on the day before, so that throughout the day, my staff can go to those places and say, okay, I'm supposed to take the sign that says campus tours to this location and set it up with this easel. No one has to think about anything. And if I should get hit by a bus and I'm not there, everybody knows exactly what they need to be doing, and no one has an excuse for why these streamers didn't get around that statue by 10 a.m. So that's really important, because when you have some of my events, I have 40 or 50 people that are working with me to put these events on. I can't be everywhere at one time, and a lot of times I don't even see most of the event, but I do make sure that everybody knows where they're supposed to go. And I just walk around and manage. You know, I troubleshoot. I don't have to necessarily be tied to one location unless there's something going on. Everyone else is managing for me. And I'm confident, after having several training meetings before each, where we go through this production schedule, that everyone knows what they're going to do, and that they know it so well that they can put a smile on their face and be pleasant in doing it. When people are uncomfortable, they can't necessarily do that. So you've got to do the preparation as the planner to make sure. And people think I'm crazy, I will tell you. They think, oh my God, I can't believe you sit down and do this. I absolutely do. And most of it is because I know that I've written everything down, and that if I can't fill in a detail, especially if I'm going back and, you know, updating the production schedule from a previous year, that means I've still got more work to do. And once this event is done, or once this production schedule is done and printed out, I know it's ready. And it just makes me feel so much better.
And is it in a binder, you said, or a box? You said.
Well, there's two things. So this I typically put on a clipboard and carry with me. And then I will also carry, like, this is one of my programs for the event. So all of that goes together. In addition to, this is all like from my clipboard that I just found on my desk. The scripts, I have several scripts. I try to get the scripts from all the people that are speaking so that I can follow along, so I can cue the next people coming on stage. But then the boxes that I pack are mentioned in the production schedule. It'll say, Terry, take box 4 to this location and do this. Take this out of the box and do this with it.
I see.
Because you have to understand that as event planners, we hold a lot of information in our minds. Right? We think that we've told everybody what to do, and we haven't done it. We just can't. And you think that when you've dealt with it in your mind, that it's done. It's not. And then the people that are working for you don't know what the heck you expect them to do. So by telling them exactly, yes, sometimes it's too much information. Yes, sometimes they're like, okay, I'm a professional staff member. I know to take the box to the place. At least I've said it. And it's there. And if they've read the production schedule, we're still working on getting everybody to read them. Mm-hmm. But if everybody has it and they're reading it, everything should go exactly as planned, as long as I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. So if you need to send this electronically, if you need to have an app with your staff to make sure they have it, do whatever it takes to spread that information. Do it as you go. Don't necessarily wait until the day before the event to put this together. Normally, I'm working on this at least 2 weeks out.
Yeah. That gives you time to fill in things as they come up, but you have your basic template, your skull, the exactly. Bones of the event in place.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's any other questions right now. So I'm just going to say once again, and Andrias, thank you so much. You did a fabulous job. I took notes, and I know I learned quite a few tidbits through the course of your presentation. So I just want to thank you very much, and I'll let people know that we will be posting this after on the Special Events Institute YouTube channel, and also if you come to our website or look for us at Facebook, Special Events Institute. Also, we have the Events Institute on YouTube, and we do tweet at Events Institute, and we are on Instagram at Events Institute as well. So please join in the discussion and the conversation, and we're happy to be a resource to you as event professionals. Andrias, once again, bye. Thanks so much, and we'll be closing our broadcast today.